Welcome back, and today we are going to be playing out the Italian Premium AMAX that is at 11.3. And you might think, why is this thing almost a full BR higher than the one that we have in the tech tree, which is at 10.3, which is already arguably kind of over-tiered when it comes to RRB. And just like you, I am completely puzzled. It switches the Vulcan for the Aidens, which are, in my opinion, vastly inferior. And then next to that, we get the MAA-1 Piranha missiles. And these on paper are pretty damn good. They pull a lot of Gs, they are very maneuverable, but in practice, I think that they are actually worse than the AIM-9Ls. And it mainly comes down to the flare resistance. These things really like going for flares. They have zero flare rejection, or at least it feels that way. And while they do pull quite a lot of Gs and they are very maneuverable, the range is kind of limited and it likes to do this. You see how it flies straight for a second and then it starts pulling in? And while this isn't a massive issue, it does hamper your ability to get the super close range shots regardless. That little bit it flies straight is often enough for the missile to not have the ability to pull in anymore, despite the fact that it will pull 40 Gs. The AIM-9L has much more range, much more likely to reject flares, and the extra maneuverability doesn't really help you out that often. You don't have a radar sight, you can't slave it, you can't use an HMD, so you don't get off-bore shots. So overall the maneuverability very often just doesn't really come into play. Very often it's all about the flare rejection and having a little bit more range. And the AIM-9L fills both of those roles a lot better than this thing does. And then we have, of course, ground RB. And yes, it has a pretty decent ground ordnance option. You have the 6 paveways with the targeting pod. But the one that we have in the regular tech tree also has this, and it's at 10.7 in ground RB. And this thing, despite the dynamic battle rating changes, is still going to be 11.3 in ground RB. So there's really no real reason to fly this thing out. And I think it's just a bit of a struggle bus. I didn't have a very great time in it. Now, I didn't do terribly. But the main issue here is that you are subsonic. You don't really have a working engine. And if you try to drop anywhere below 850 to 800 kilometers an hour, this thing just turns into an absolute oil tanker, and it doesn't really do what you want it to. The flaps are very good, but again, you just don't have a working engine. You don't have the energy to really use your flaps. And overall, this thing is a bit of a griefmobile. It is a ground pounder, but it doesn't really fill any niches that you can't have for free. Now here I'm going to show you a bit of a bad launch, but I just want to illustrate how the Piranha missiles are. I lead the missile a little bit. You'd say 40 G at like a 1 kilometer deflection should be able to pull in, but no, it flies straight for a little bit. Then by the time it starts pulling in, it's already like 500 meters away. And it never has the ability to pull in. And he flared it anyway, so it wouldn't hit regardless. But I hope that the point that I'm trying to make is clear. They are short range missiles that are limited in their use. So it's a little bit of an L. But you know, they work. They're not terrible missiles. But I do think that the AIM-9L is simply better at a lower BR. And I think that the AMX could get away with being 10.3. Especially in the new matchmaker right now. You can see F-14s in this thing in an up tier. Right now, planes like the F-8U are a lower BR than this thing, and that thing is absolutely criminal. We have the F-8E, which is the same BR as the one in the tech tree. So I don't really understand why this thing can't be 10.3 either. Now, I don't want to push them any lower, because I don't want to push AIM-9Ls into the flareless plane category. But overall, I think it's a little bit ridiculous. Then I want to look at this damage right here, because the guns sometimes are just... They're not a Vulcan. They are okay, they pack punch most of the time, but when they don't, they really don't do anything. And they are just very frustrating to deal with. We just burned through like 2/3 of our ammo. Yes, I was a little bit greedy. I could have shot a little bit less. But with this thing, you really need to just grab any opportunity you can get. And we know what we do here when we grab those opportunities. You need to start sucking on it. This thing doesn't get many opportunities in a match. You are way too slow, and especially maps like Afghanistan, Pyrenees, or just any map that is above like 2 kilometers, you are gonna feel the struggle. Then we have another issue. We do not have radar missiles or any presence in the head-on. Aidens aren't very great in the head-on. The Piranhas are gonna be instantly flared, and you don't really have energy, so you need to have a little bit of altitude. The issue is with altitude, you are going to be locked up by SARH missiles. Especially AIM-7Fs and R-24s are going to be the bane of your existence. And while you are up there, it's very hard, while near impossible for you, to notch any of the missiles coming your way. So you are now in this little bit of a predicament where You want to stay low in the terrain to dodge the radar missiles, but if you stay low, you are going to be out-energied. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, and it's up to preference. I like to hang back a little bit, get a bit of altitude, wait for the first merge. And after that, what I will do is I will dive into the fight and I will go to a little bit of a lower altitude. Now here we are fighting a Mirage, 2 Mirages actually. We managed to severe one of them, and then we pitch up after the second one. Now we pull up here. We get a pretty good position, but he rolls out of the way. And we are going to have a bit of an issue here trying to get guns on him. I am going to stick it anyway, because at this point I am not aware of what is about to happen. So we pitch up after him, and we are a bit on the clock, but we are in a decent position. So I'm going to use all my energy here with my flaps to pull in for this one shot. We line it up, and yeah, I wasn't aware, and that's why you heard it. At this point I'm like, ah, well, shit. Luckily, I do have a teammate around who's gonna make sure that even though I don't have any ammo, the guy gets clapped regardless. And here we are, we took a little bit of altitude at the start. I like to be offset with my team. I like to be somewhat alone. And yes, this is risky, because if you get caught out, you are probably just dead. But you're probably dead if you get caught anyway, and I like to come in where I actually have the ability to get kills. You can play to stay alive, or you can play to get some kills. You can't really do both at the same time. If you play this thing completely safe, you're probably not gonna accomplish anything. And if you play this super aggressively, you are very likely not gonna be surviving the match. But I'd rather get some kills and have some fun while doing it, than try to survive every game and basically never have the ability to really go for anyone, because anything you do in this thing is a massive risk. Now we have a MiG-23 diving in, and this is one of the features, let's call it that, from the AMX, where you are kind of slow and people try to like go for the reversals like this guy. And this is something that happened quite often. They just turn in front of you, they think you're gonna overshoot, but I'm going like 900. And if they think you're going supersonic, and I think that's the only ace up its sleeve where people just kind of expect you to be quicker. Once people start catching on how bad this thing is, and trust me, they already know and they will focus you for it, you're not gonna have a great time. I think that the longer this plane stays in the game, the worse it's going to get. Now I played this plane literally 2 days ago. I played it in the weekend of the 10th of August, so it is very recent. Normally my gameplay is a little bit older. And a lot of people would just focus you. They know that you can't outturn them. They know that you can't contest them in the head-on. And they know that you're just kind of just useless for the most part. Now, sometimes you still get games like this, especially with all the premium planes. We kill the MiG-23 ML, an F4S, and I think the first missile kill was also an F4S. We have seen him in the back of his head. And now we are in this little bit of a valley, and I don't know where anyone is. We don't have many teammates alive, we don't have many enemies alive, but we do have some, and we are alone on this side of the map. So we need to stay vigilant now, and I do want to actually get a bit of a dogfight. Su-25 rocks up, we flare him, pre-flare him. Almost got missiled anyway, because that's a BM, and that's probably an R-73. Kind of spooked me. We go up over his nose, we pitch in behind him, but he is so occupied trying to bomb. So make sure that we don't get bombed by him, and then we just instantly take his plane apart. All cool and dandy, but there is still another guy left. Not entirely sure where he is at this moment, so I keep looking around, and there he is. Now at this point I am pretty spooked, because I am way too high. A notch right here isn't really feasible, so I'm just going to use this little bit of a mountain, yes that's a mountain, to get rid of the missile, and then we might be able to pull in here. Now the F4 junk will definitely not outturn us, but he does have a lot more energy. Now luckily it's another premium plane, and I think that every kill this match actually was a premium plane, so they all don't have a clue on what to do. And these are the matches that you have to prey on. Do you want something like a 5-kill game? Now luckily it's very common, because it's absolutely infested with premium players at this BR, but even then it's just quite something. We do the orbital strike thing, launch 2 missiles, pull off, 2 easy kills, and that is a great start of the match, but our team is still going to absolutely collapse. And all these planes you see in the middle, Kafir, well the F4 junk isn't that much of an issue, but the J7s, the J7Es, the MiG-23s and everything else is gonna be a massive issue for us to kill, and especially that J7E will single-handedly absolutely ruin this match. And it doesn't even matter how bad he is, he will simply outperform me completely. We get kill number 3 in, and we need to disengage a little bit. We are only going about 1,000, which is, yes, fast for this thing, but nowhere near enough to deal with like 5 planes at once. And again, we had a pretty good start here, but our team is still going to collapse. And with this plane, you really don't have much battle presence whatsoever. You can't really turn the tide in your favor unless you get a super opportunistic approach, where maybe there's like 4 people stalled out, you missile 2 of them, and then you gun the other 2 as they are all in like a massive furball. But that's like, you can do that in any other plane. It doesn't need to be this thing, and I don't think that you really have situations where I'm like, okay, I was able to win this because of the AMX. It's always despite of the AMX. Now we go head on with 6 people at once. We go head on with the MiG-23 here. We are pre-flaring, making sure that he doesn't R60 us in head on. We pull out and we fly towards the other side of the map. And here is going to be a little bit of my my secret tech, should we call it. It's pretty simple, but it's something to keep in mind anyway. When you are shooting at people, especially with missiles that are very flare hungry, it's important that you shoot at guys that aren't going to accidentally flare you, even when they don't see you. This guy is pre-flaring, and there's really no use shooting at him. But this guy right here, the guy on the left, he is one shooting at someone else. He has no one else shooting at him, and he doesn't see us, so he's triple distracted. And we get a very easy kill with the MAA-1. And it kind of looks like, you know, it's like a goat, but ignore that, it's late. But yeah, I don't really have much to talk about here. It's mostly farming, premium planes, attackers, and the battle rating here is pretty desolate of incredibly good players, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of premiums, and this is one of them. And it's one of them that I really don't recommend you to buy. I think it's a waste of money, especially with the one that we have in the tech tree. Will it be a good grinder? Maybe. I'm not sure how effective these things are in Tankerby, especially at the Piranha this thing is at 11.3. I do think that you're just going to get cucked by AA. But you know, I'm sure that someone else will definitely be able to help you out on that one. At least for Araby, this thing is the opposite of worth it. Other than the fact that it's a premium, I guess. It can grind, but there's a lot of premiums that can do it as well. And I do think that something like the F-104S TAF is just a much better plane. Or alternatively, just buy the Ariete and then Talisman the F-104S in the tech tree. Or Talisman the AMX if you really want to fly this thing. And I do think that there is just no real reason to buy this other than the Piranha missiles, which I think aren't even that fantastic. He's another premium player that is simply not paying attention. And then we get another premium player in an A10 directly behind us. Now an A10 is kind of annoying to deal with, but it's mostly in the head-on. And the second you get past it, it's really not that much of an issue again. You can just go vertical, and then you get the battle of the attackers. One of them that turns actually quite well, but is slow and doesn't have much energy. And then you have the other one that is actually quite slow, doesn't have much energy, but also doesn't turn that well at all. Now we think we almost get the shot here, but we misjudge it by a hair. And he is just gonna sit inside of our radius. There's really no way for us to get the shot there. And I was expecting him to pull down, because going up for him was an absolute death sentence. But, you know, maybe he just played it better than me and I wasn't able to get the shot. He delayed for just a bit longer and it's almost going to make him actually survive this game. He dives away, he picks up a little bit of extra speed. Makes him a little bit more maneuverable. But it's still an A10. We are going to be catching him. We are pre-flaring. We're also in the flares of the A10 here. So I didn't expect that to hit me. But we take his plane apart regardless. And I almost get killed by a guy from like 3 kilometers away when there's flares everywhere. But you know, not gonna complain, we survived, we got the kill. And I'm done flying this plane now. So thank you all for watching, and you'll see me in the next one.